Good morning, First Unitarian Denver. Wherever you are, here in person or watching on your screen of choice, we're glad you're here. We light our chalice this morning with the classic poem from Robert Frost, "The Road Not Taken." Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere, ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Once again, welcome.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison. Circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children. Keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison.
Good morning. So we've been talking about reparations, which are actions that we take to repair a relationship, a situation, or an item that has been damaged or broken by our words, our policies, or our actions. So reparations. Repair doesn't always mean that things will be reset or returned to the way that they were before. Repair might mean cleaning up a mess and moving forward with different intentions and awareness and agreements. And that's why this morning I'm talking to you about toothpaste. Today is my wedding anniversary. When I was first married, Jason and I had a toothpaste situation. I squeeze from the bottom and he squeezes from the middle. And clearly my way was right, even if the end result was the same. I frequently would find a middle squeezed tube and re-squeeze all the bottom stuff up towards the top. To be honest, I don't even know if this is a thing that we do anymore. But I do know that we both brush our teeth. We have lots of other things to pay attention to now. I also know that toothpaste is a lot like the words that come out of our mouths or the actions of our country over our history. A demonstration. Oops. Toothpaste. I squeeze from the bottom. I don't know if you noticed that. It's still a thing I do. There we go. Totally empty. It's all out. Does anybody want to come up here and try to put the toothpaste back into the tube? No? Can we do that? Is that going to be a thing that will be fun or easy, really? Maybe possible, but it's going to take some time and some money and probably make a bigger mess than it's worth, right? So if these are our words and then these are our actions, yeah, we can make an awful lot of mess if we don't think before we squeeze things out of this tube. And we are also going to make mistakes, but when we do, there needs to be repair. What if we thought of our daily words and our actions like toothpaste? Perhaps we can squeeze out some extra kindness, inclusion, thoughtfulness, and love instead of a mess from the bottom to the top, even the middle, why not? We'll start our story time online this Friday with Matt using our Zoom link, same as before, in an attempt to try to squeeze out some extra love and kindness and inclusion into our community. So we're going to use the same room as before, or if you don't have that link, our First Unitarian Families Facebook page will also have the link on there, and that'll be Friday at 7. Join us so that we can squeeze out a little extra love onto you. And I don't have to use these paper towels because the mess didn't leave the plate. Have a beautiful Sunday.
Hi, I'm Arnie Carter from the Giving in Action Committee here at the church, and I'm here to introduce Mark Donovan from the Denver Basic Income Project. This is a real innovative and beautiful way to end poverty.
Thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be here. The Denver Basic Income Project is an initiative that's going to be providing basic income to our unhoused neighbors starting at the beginning of next year. It's an ambitious program that is modeling after the success of other programs around the country, such as the New Leaf program in Vancouver that gave direct cash to unhoused individuals and saw that it accelerated their path towards stability and improved their life in many ways. I'm grateful that you are dedicating your giving today to the project, and I thank you for that. But more importantly than that, I want to challenge each of you to believe that you can make a difference and that we can do better as we try to address the situation of the unhoused community in Denver. I've been quite emotional today, and anytime that I dare to have the audacity to believe that we can make a difference, it's almost an overwhelming thought. We're failing now. You look out on the streets and we all know this, and we can do better. This project is one step to try to do something different, to make a difference, to trust individuals that they have the agency and ability to know what's needed in their life. Most people that are unhoused are not there because of their own choices, but because of systems and structures within our economy and our society that oppress and are unjust. The unhoused are predominantly, disproportionately people of color. Indigenous people are 5 times as likely to be unhoused as white folk. And this is wrong, and we all know it, and I know that you're here because you believe, and I hope that you believe that you can make a difference. So my challenge to you today is not just to support the Denver Basic Income Project, but to every day treat those individuals that you meet on the street that are unhoused with the same dignity and respect that you expect, that we expect to receive, and believe that you can make a difference every day and then make that difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So you guys know how to donate, right? You click on the blue breeze, click on Giving in Action. For those of us that are here, there'll be a basket in the back that we can donate it to. Thank you.
How the flags are flying, reparations is a must, while the old ways are quickly dying. Reparations is a must, and the fireworks in the night sky, tomorrow's poison dust, all parades across the nation. Reparations is a must.
Statues and the glory. Reparations is a must. The story behind the story. Reparations is a must. All the children in their classrooms and the teachers they're asked to trust can write it on the whiteboard. Ooh, reparations is a must.
All the parks and byways.
Reparations is a must.
Through all the crowds that block the highways.
Reparations is a must.
And the good words from the news team. Work it out or bust. And the wind that shakes the barley says,
Ooh, reparations is a must. At the barbecues and clam bakes, reparations is a must. Through the laughter and the milkshakes, reparations is a must. And the sunburns on the front porch, no time to fight or fuss. You all know what to do now. Ooh, reparations is a must. We'll count our footsteps, elevate our gaze, clear our path
throughout the halls of power.
Reparations is a must.
Song grows by the hour.
Reparations is a must.
But if they can't sing and they won't dance, how can they earn the trust and be invited to the party?
Ooh, reparations is a must. Now who needs facts to ponder? Reparations is a must. Just grab a map and wander. Reparations is a must. If you listen, you'll hear clearly. It was never meant for us. But if you sing, this land is your land. Ooh, reparations is a must. It's a must, it's a must, it's a must. Ooh, reparations is a must. Ooh, reparations is a must. It's a must, it's a must, it's a must. Ooh, reparations is a must.
Good morning, First Unitarian. Before the prayer this morning, just a reminder that the next reparations discussion will be this afternoon at 1 p.m. on Zoom, and the access to that Zoom meeting is available on our website and also in the first announcement that came out last Thursday. Hope you can join that discussion. A few joys and concerns of our larger community. There will be a memorial service for Polly Langford next Saturday at 2 p.m. It will be outdoors at the west end of Cook Park Community Center. That's at 7100 Cherry Creek Drive South. There will be a memorial service for Tim Murphy the following Saturday, October 16th, also at 2 p.m. and also outside. That will be at the north end of Alamo Placida Park, which is not too far from here, basically Spear and Corona, I think, or Spear and Ogden. Yeah, 4th and Ogden. Please plan to bring your own chairs or a blanket to sit on, and this information will also be in First Announce this coming week and on our website. I want to send out strength and clarity to families in our congregation and beyond who are going through separation and divorce. Even under the best of circumstances, that is always a painful, difficult situation. And I want to send out prayers for relief and resources for all of those who are dealing with the rapidly rising rents and cost of living in Denver, Colorado, especially families with small children and some of our elders living on fixed income. And this morning I'd like to hold Haitian refugees in our hearts and in our prayers. People who are fleeing for their lives, the violence, the political upheaval, the devastating effects of both earthquakes and hurricanes in that troubled country. May the world, including the United States, have mercy on these poor folks. Our prayer today is lightly excerpted from the Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran on giving. You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give. There are those who give little of the much which they have, and they give it for recognition, and their hidden desire makes their gifts unwholesome. And there are those who have little and give it all. These are the believers in life and the bounty of life, and their coffer is never empty. There are those who give with joy, and that joy is their reward. There are those who give with pain, and that pain is their baptism. And there are those who give and know not pain in giving, nor do they seek joy, nor give with mindfulness of virtue. They give as in yonder valley the myrtle breathes its fragrance into space. Through the hands of such as these, God speaks, and from behind their eyes, he smiles upon the earth. You often say, I would give, but only to the deserving. The trees in your orchard say not so, nor the flocks in your pasture. They give that they may live, for to withhold is to perish. Surely he who is worthy to receive his day and his nights is worthy of all else from you. And he who has deserved to drink from the ocean of life deserves to fill his cup from your little stream. And what greater desert shall there be than that which lies in the courage and the confidence, nay, the charity of receiving? And who are you that men should rend their bosom and unveil their pride, that you may see their worth naked and their pride unabashed? See first that you yourself deserve to be a giver and an instrument of giving. For in truth, it is life that gives unto life, while you, who deem yourself a giver, are but a witness. Amen. Nice, thank you. Good folks. You probably caught on there's a movement afoot at First Unitarian Denver. We've been given a proposal that we take a deep dive into the issue of reparations for Black Americans based on the last 400 years of history. And I want to talk about that proposal, but a little bit of history of First Unitarian before, well, at least to get where I'm going today. You probably know, you may know, and if you don't, you should know, First Unitarian Denver has wrestled with race and racial justice going all the way back to the 1950s. Members of this congregation were involved in creating and in passing civil rights legislation here in Colorado. We're founding members of the Congress of Racial Equality here in Colorado. We have members, some of whom are still with us, white people and people of color, who would go out and test real estate developers to make sure they were following fair housing laws. We have people in our congregation who were members of the National Board of Trustees when the Black Caucus of Unitarian Universalists demanded funding and equal representation at the Denominational General Assembly in 1968. We once bought mountain property in an attempt to have a summer camp for inner city Black kids, and later gave that property to a Black-led group to carry on the work when we realized we'd bit off more than we could chew. More recently, Black Lives Matter 50 to 80, the local Denver chapter of the national movement, was born in our basement in a community meeting after Michael Brown was murdered in Ferguson, Missouri. And Soul to Soul Sisters was born after we invited Reverend Dawn Riley Duvall and Reverend Tawana Davis to preach at one of our Standing on the Side of Love services at the Capitol, the Colorado State Capitol. In sermons from this pulpit, we have many times remembered Reverend Dr. King, not just the whitewashed version, but the radical revolutionary visions of his life and work. We have delved into the theology of Howard Thurman and how the Black church in America transformed the oppressive Jesus of white Christianity into a powerful symbol of spiritual and political liberation. We have considered the untold history of American wealth, the kind that was never taught in our high schools, how slavery was not a peripheral piece of American history, but absolutely central to that history, how slaves and slavery were the primary engine of wealth generation in the colonies and beyond, both in terms of stolen labor and in terms of the literal value of human beings bought, sold, and traded as livestock. We've acknowledged how the wealth that was thus generated was the same wealth, literally the same wealth, that built the factories, built the universities, laid the railroads, funded the banks and financial institutions, bought the land, bought the legislation, and the war machine that would come to dominate first this continent and later the entire world. And none of it would have been possible without the lives and stolen labor of African slaves. We have numerous times called attention to some basic facts of American life. American Black men are 13 times more likely to be incarcerated than white men, even though all the evidence shows that crime is about equal between white and Black men. Black Americans are 4 times more likely to be shot by police. The infant mortality rate for Black Americans is 3 times the rate for white Americans. The average wealth of a white household in America is 15 times the average wealth of a Black household in America. Inequality is baked into the way schools are funded or not funded, the way poverty is stigmatized, the way all manner of opportunities are racially selective. On and on it goes. From this pulpit, we have heard Reverend Tawana Davis preach about the spiritual empowerment to do the hard work of dismantling white supremacy. We have learned of the brilliant work of Dr. Joy DeGroy-Leary in post-traumatic slave syndrome. We've learned of the brilliant work of Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw in intersectionality. We have studied Michelle Alexander's exhaustive research on mass incarceration and the new Jim Crow. We've learned about how the justice system in America is really the injustice system in America, especially if you're not white, as poignantly detailed by Brian Stevenson and others. We've celebrated Black American music, scholarship, and culture, rightfully marveling that a people so profoundly oppressed for so long in so many ways would also be the source of such astonishing artistry, creativity, civility, dignity, and heroism. In this very pulpit where I am standing right now has stood Dr. Vincent Harding, Reverend Gil Caldwell, Debbie Irving, Hasira Ashamu, Dominique Christina, Slam Nuba, Norma Johnson, Theo Wilson, Hassan Latif, and many others. I could go on and on. We have people working right now on sealing the records of people who've been arrested but not convicted of a crime so that they don't have to report that arrest on job applications. Much of the recent work on racial justice has come from our Racial Justice Project, which you have voted on and funded for the past 5 years. Faithfully led by Julie Myers and Peggy Ulrich Nims for 3 years, now co-chaired by Steve Brainerd and Patrick Horton. We have had forums, we have generated core circle curricula, we have had guest speakers, we have hired consultants, run workshops, we've read a bunch of books. Some of the books that we've read, at least to me, have been absolutely revelatory. I'll name just a few. The Half Never Told, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, Waking Up White, So You Want to Talk About Race, Between the World and Me, Stamped from the Beginning. Those were ones I thought were particularly excellent and powerful. Last year, we created a new covenant, congregational covenant, here at First Unitarian that includes the words, "We will learn about white supremacy culture to be a more equitable congregation." For the past 2 years, David Alley has been facilitating a group of people studying reparations for Black Americans, what that is, what that might look like, what others have thought and written about reparations or how it might work. And out of all this study and all this time, all this effort, the forums, the workshops, the sermons, the guest speakers, the books, our Racial Justice Project has created a proposal for us that we as a whole church community take a serious, sober look at reparations for Black Americans. That proposal was presented to our Faith in Action Council, which approved it, and then to our Board of Trustees, which also approved it, with the caveat that any plan for actual fundraising that arises out of this congregational discussion will have to come back to the board for approval before moving forward. All right, I've spent a lot of time now talking about some of this history and background for one reason, which is to be absolutely clear that this reparations proposal that we have in front of us is not coming out of nowhere. All right? We've been plowing this field for a long time. Amen? Here's where I am personally. As I said a few weeks ago, I just think we've read enough books now and heard enough sermons and shared enough words. And we could go on doing that ad infinitum. More workshops, more books, more guest speakers, and so on, if we chose. But I agree with our Racial Justice Project. It's time to take the conversation to a deeper place that wrestles not just with racism, but with what can actually be done, like materially, economically, practically, relationally, by this particular community of faith. What is our role and what is our responsibility in making amends for 400 years of systematic, violent racial oppression? Or at least, what is our responsibility as a, let's be honest, frankly, mostly white congregation, people of faith? How can we, and what is our responsibility to at least move in that direction? This is really hard stuff. Ask anybody who's been part of these conversations. It's hard. There is a giant bleeding wound in our country. It is embedded in our language, our culture, in our economy, in our institutions. Racial relationships are rightfully damaged, profoundly so, fraught with centuries of justifiable distrust, mistrust. How do we even begin to start making that right, to move toward something that we could call right relationship? And I have to, again, I'll be as transparent in my own thinking as I possibly can. That's my question when I think about racial justice in America. Beyond policies, beyond anything, it comes down to this: what does right relationship look like? How do we move towards that in a way that is meaningful, substantial, material? What would right relationship look like? Well, it's not pity or charity or white savior syndrome. It's not holier than thou performative wokeness. It's not empty gestures of posting memes on Facebook or Instagram. It's not token gestures or the occasional painless donation so we can feel good about ourselves. And especially for white people like me, it's not centering ourselves in the story or in control or in the relationship, which is hard. Because if you're a white person in America like I am, you've always been the center of the story. Or at least people who look like you have been. So to me, reparations is mostly about repairing relationship, moving toward right relationship. And that means, as any therapist or mediator will tell you, that means acknowledging the truth, making amends for the past, building trust for the future. So, a couple of things we should all just be really, really clear about. No one believes that reparations in any form is a be-all, end-all solution to systemic racism. It's just not that simple. There's no way to make all that history and all that pain just go away. Not going to happen. There's no way to make the social, cultural, economic, institutional systems that perpetuate racism magically transform into models of racial equality or equity. And I'll be really blunt, reparations, the very idea, have any number of other complex moral and pragmatic problems, some of which have already been raised here by very thoughtful and beloved members of our community. Out in the world, if you bring up reparations, you're likely to hear things like, but it was so long ago, all that stuff. Yes, and the truth was that it wasn't all that long ago, and the residual effects of the past are alive and well right now. I've heard versions of, but my family never owned slaves, or my family didn't immigrate until after slavery. Yes, and if you grew up white in America, your particular family history just really doesn't matter that much, because you have benefited and you continue to benefit from the racialized systems in our country. I've heard, and you'll hear out there, but we have the Civil Rights Act. Yes. And the actual statistics and the real lives of real people, in many cases, have barely changed, or not changed at all, and in some cases are worse. And then there's the issue, if we do decide, and I don't know what the answer to this is, but if we do decide to raise money to apply toward reparations, we won't get to say how it gets spent. That's a really hard one for a lot of donors. But part of the very idea of reparations is that we take white leadership and white expectations out of the equation, so that black people, black-led organizations, determine for themselves how and where and for what any money would go. Again, reparations are about repairing relationships, making amends for the past, building trust for the future. Maybe most poignantly, some members, beloved members of our community, feel that limiting this current proposal to black reparations ignores tribal nations and indigenous people on whose lands, on whose stolen lands, we are all currently living and existing. This is a powerful and a worthy point. Our Racial Justice Project has spent a considerable amount of time listening and discussing this particular request, that we expand our reparation conversation to include tribal issues, Native Indigenous people issues. For the moment, we've decided to leave the proposal as it is, focusing on black reparations for the following reasons. First, we feel that the matter of indigenous reparations is so important that it deserves to be its own project. Black American history and culture and the desire for self-determination is radically different from indigenous people's history, culture, and desire for self-determination. The Racial Justice Project feels that to lump those together would dilute and very possibly disrespect both of them. Second, the Racial Justice Project feels that we as a congregation, we haven't done our homework on that issue, on the highly diverse indigenous communities that are out there. No one's saying it's less important, but we haven't been working on that issue since the 1950s. We haven't had workshops, sermons, consultants. We haven't done congregational reading or sponsored study groups. We haven't had 5 years of indigenous justice as a congregational project. Reparations for indigenous people is an absolutely worthy, needed project. It just hasn't been our project, at least not thus far. And third, very much along those lines, just pragmatically, in terms of our own congregational process, reparations for indigenous people is not the proposal we have in front of us. The proposal we have is already the result of a lot of faithful work at First Unitarian Denver. The proposal we have has been sent around and commented on by black leaders in the community around Denver. The proposal we have has been vetted and approved by our elected Faith in Action Council and our Board of Trustees. The Racial Justice Project just feels like the train has left the station on the existing proposal, and we should carry it through. And you may be someone who feels that none of that matters, or it doesn't matter enough to exclude indigenous issues from the current proposal. You may have other thoughts or feelings or objections or passions to bring to the table. Fantastic. Excellent, even. We need all those voices and all those thoughts. Please bring your concerns to the table. Bring them to our discussions. As I said last week, I will be completely transparent about my own thoughts about what I hope will come from this proposal, but I am way more invested in us having a civil, constructive, creative, connective conversation than I am in any particular result. I really do see this as an opportunity for us to talk about some very real stuff, to share what's in our hearts, to come in from the periphery of racism as a intellectual exercise and get into the nitty-gritty of what we can actually do. That's my priority, and I hope it's yours too. I can't be clear enough about that. Two last things I feel need to be said. And then I will wrap this up, I promise. First, you may not be aware of this, but First Unitarian Denver is a national leader on social justice issues. Our congregation, you, us. We were the first congregation in the country to do Beyond the Welcoming Congregation curriculum. We were the congregation that started Standing on the Side of Love, holding annual worship services down at the Colorado State Capitol, which eventually became the largest single gathering of Unitarian Universalists anywhere outside of our annual national meeting. We're noted as a faith leader in the history of marriage equality in Colorado. We were founding members of the Metro Denver Sanctuary Coalition. We were the first congregation within 1,000 miles of this spot to offer sanctuary to someone facing deportation. We were the first Unitarian Universalist congregation anywhere to offer sanctuary to someone. We led the way, and we are nationally known for our work on immigration justice. We are well known locally for our work on racial justice. I think it's time for us to lead again. Amen? As we have before, it's time to be a model, to create the model for other congregations to follow and learn from and maybe improve upon. But we can be the first, and I think we should. I think that's who we are. Lastly, but not least, in everything we do with this, we must be absolutely, crystal, emphatically, unequivocally clear that when we are talking about reparations, we are not talking about charity or philanthropy or benevolence or, God forbid, patronage or any other such offensive term. We are talking about justice, and we're talking about right relationship. We're talking about acknowledging the truth, making amends for the wounds of the past, building trust for the future. That's it. Nothing more and nothing less. The great activist Leela Watson said this so clearly: if you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. That is the way it has to be. Amen.
We shall not give up the fight, we have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight, we have only started. We have only started. We have only started. Together we'll have victory, hand holding hand, hand holding hand, hand holding hand. Together we'll have victory, hand holding hand, hand holding hand, hand holding hand. Never ever put to flight, we're bound to win. We're bound to win. We are bound to win. Never ever put to flight, we're bound to win. We're bound to win. We are bound to win. We shall not give up the fight, we have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight, we have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight, we have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight, we have only started. We have only started. We have only started.
Would you please join me in speaking our closing affirmation? Behind all our differences and beneath our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one, that binds us forever together, throughout all time, through life and death, and the space between the stars. Over the last few weeks, I've been teaching you the ASL that I learned from Tanya Chittick, and we're going to finish that today. If you weren't here, weren't able to see the previous weeks, don't worry, we're going to go through all of it slowly. So, behind all our differences and beneath our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together. And here's the new part. Throughout all time, take two fingers on one side of your body and bring them up across your chest and then down forward. Throughout all time, throughout all time, through life and death. One hand up, one hand down, and then switch the side. Through life and death, and the space between the stars. So that whole last line is throughout all time, through life and death, and the space between the stars. Lee is going to be playing the musical background, and I invite you to do the ASL with me as much as you are comfortable and able, and we'll be doing this every week. I do also ask you to refrain from singing at this time.
Before I do the benediction, I just want to note, I was watching that video of our beloved choir singing that song in that park, and that was awesome. And, man, I hate COVID. Because I remember that choir doing that piece up here, and the energy that was in this room, and the way that sound filled the walls, and man, I miss that.
You can come join us every Sunday at 12:30.
Yeah, our choir practice is now on Sunday afternoons, 12:30 at Alamo Placida Park at 4th and Ogden. All are welcome. May you be blessed with discomfort, at easy answers, half-truths, and superficial relationships. May you be blessed with anger, at injustice, oppression, and exploitation. May you be blessed with tears, to shed for those who suffer from pain, rejection, starvation, and war. And may you be blessed with enough foolishness to believe that you can make a difference in this world, because indeed you can, and you do. Amen, friends.
Yeah, that is the end of the service. We experimented with putting our postlude a little earlier today and ending with a benediction. Even though we're not serving coffee at this time, please stick around and enjoy this community in our community room or outside. It's a beautiful day. Thank you for worshiping with us this morning.